Welcome everyone, my name is Trevor Bernard and I'm CompNow's Microsoft Surface Specialist. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us for today's Power Up Surface Modern Workshop. I'm joined by our one and only Aaron Polley, our Engineering Manager from Queensland, who will later give us a fantastic demonstration and deeper dive into modern deployments with Intune. Let's jump into it. For those who don't already know us, CompNow is a 100% Australian-owned company. We are a Microsoft Gold partner and we're really proud of how we are able to service our Surface clients. As well as being a Gold Microsoft partner, we were also awarded the Modern Solutions Partner of the Year Award in 2020. Alongside this, we are the first independent reseller to become a Microsoft Surface authorised service provider, which also allows us to provide on-site repairs of Microsoft Surface devices. One of the key items I wanted to cover today was our Power Up program. Power Up enables your school or business to apply for Microsoft funding to support additional services and assist your Surface fleet integration. This funding can be applied to training, readiness reviews, pilot programs, or customised application development. This provides a great opportunity for your organisation to take advantage of our large range of features that Surface has to offer. The way we work has changed for good. The rapid transformation we are in has added urgency to companies' efforts around employee wellbeing, cloud-based deployment, and flexibility. I know that I really like the flexibility of hybrid working, and as a business, we use Teams as one of our primary means of peer-to-peer communication. Later, Aaron will speak about how, in this current environment, CompNow has been rolling out and managing devices remotely without sacrificing security. I'm really excited about the current Surface portfolio. There is a good coverage of devices in the range to suit most requirements, and these devices have proven themselves to be reliable and well liked by consumers in our customers' environments. The new Surface laptop will transform the way you work. It is Microsoft's most powerful laptop yet. The Surface Laptop Studio matches speed, graphics, and long battery life with versatility. There are lots of great bits to look at with the Laptop Studio, but if you're interested, please go and check out our first look video that the team will link in the chat. Our highest selling Surface is the Surface Pro range, and with the new Pro 8, we have seen lots of clients very keen to get their hands on them. It is a powerful two-in-one that can go anywhere, then adapt into a full workstation for a desktop experience. Built for people who expect more, Surface Pro 8 offers more power and performance than any other Pro, all in a sleek design that combines the power of a laptop with the flexibility of a tablet and every angle in between. The Surface Laptop 4 is perfect for users who prefer a classic laptop experience with signature Surface crafting and attention to detail. Next, we have the Surface Hub 2S, and this has been a real game changer for so many organisations. We have a great video case study available on its use at Oxley Christian College, where they have it in every classroom in their junior school and soon to be rolled out in their middle school. I find this slide an important one to show for clients. It makes it a little clearer as to where each Surface device might fit in your organisation. You can also see why the Surface Pro products are so popular because of the wide range of clients that it can cater for. Finally, one of the reasons we love Surface is its deployment capabilities with Intune. We know that it is the easiest to roll out, and in addition to this, CompNow can repair Surface devices being a Microsoft Surface authorised service provider. All of this removes barriers and gets devices into the hands of your people quicker, more securely, and with fewer headaches for IT. Now we'll hand over to Aaron, who will go a little deeper into modern deployment and management.
Thanks, Trev. Let's chat about modern endpoint management. Look, when I was working hands-on with devices, I really wondered if one day there could be a better way to manage and do the things I was doing, a lot of the rinse and repeat tasks that I was carrying out, and just wondering if there was a way that this could be enhanced. Well, today is that day, and we have with Microsoft Endpoint Manager a suite, a collection of tools which can help you guys as the day-to-day admins of devices to do stuff more efficiently and at scale, which is really, really important because time is valuable. Today, what we have is a suite of tools in Intune Configuration Manager, formerly known as System Configuration Manager, and some other tooling that we'll talk about a bit later that really helps to enhance your experience as the admins and the experience of the end users of your devices. Looking forward into what's inside of Endpoint Manager, one of the first things to really understand is that cloud-powered manageability. I mean, if you think about traditional tools, often inside of private networks and either on-premise or tightly controlled networks, we would see servers and tools that were really, I guess, centric and bound into that environment. What we get with Intune and the power inside of Endpoint Manager is a cloud-powered base of tools that really look at the different elements inside of an IT stack. Firstly, looking at, I guess, Azure Active Directory as that source of identity is really, really important. Managing the devices and the users and the groups of that organization. And we get some cool benefits of that modern approach with MFA and using some really powerful ways to secure our devices in that sense. Intune and Configuration Manager are really, really important for setting down device and user-centric policies to the devices to not only restrict and secure the things, but also enable. That's a really, really important part of all this. And we get that inside of this cloud platform, which makes it scale really well and be a low overhead for IT admins like you and me. As we look into, I guess, the analytics and the control and what's inside of the platform, it's really good to understand, that overview, that snapshot that we can get as part of this. We get those analytics to understand where the versions of Office, Windows, and other applications are at inside of our fleet, and get some real-time feedback and scoring, I guess, on the success or I should say the adoption or lack thereof in adopting these updates and staying on top from both, I guess, a feature perspective, but also from a security perspective, which is very important. So we get this scoring, we get these analytics, we get this real-time, view and pulse check of where we're at and some of the protections that come along with that as well. An important and defining difference inside of the Surface platform that takes advantage of new and improved features is around DFCI, so managing the firmware of the device from the cloud, which is really important. I mean, you guys can probably all remember days where you have to configure a BIOS password, go in and set those particular settings of how that device is going to work to try to either protect it, whether that's in education, stopping kids from putting on operating systems you didn't intend, or even just from a security and compliance perspective, making sure that, that operating system that you put a lot of effort and hard work into managing and protecting is staying that way and not being tampered at a low level. So inside of Endpoint Manager and in particular with the Surface platform, we get this management, of that UEFI, of that firmware layer, right from the cloud and right out of the box of a new device. So to kind of unpack that a little bit and show what that looks like, let's have a look and dive into the management portal to see what that looks like, creating a profile to manage these settings. All right, so as you can see here, we're in the Microsoft Endpoint Manager Admin Center. This just gives us the overview of this demonstration tenant that I've got here before me today. And what we can look at is, as I said, the configuration profile side of deploying and managing the settings for the firmware. So if we go into devices, we can see here that inside of devices, we could choose our platform as being Windows, and we can go into configuration profiles for that platform, create a profile, choose Windows 10 versus the Windows 8 and older variant, and then go ahead and choose a template. So if you're like me, you like to be efficient with your time, and it's important to use templates to help get there quickly and make sure we're doing the right thing. No point in trying to craft this by hand. So these templates are here to save time for you as the admin, and I sure appreciate that. So we go through, choose device firmware, and create. So as you can see here, some basic settings up front, really just a name, which for my purposes will be demo. And then we get into the actual configuration settings. So kind of at a high level, we get some security features, we get some hardware specific stuff, and we get some boot stuff. Again, all pretty common for a firmware BIOS UEFI perspective. So at a high level, we can say, hey, do we want to manage everything, or do we want to allow kind of a segregation between the stuff that you want to set versus letting the end user, choose stuff that you don't manage? In my case, I don't want them to manage anything, so I'm going to say none. We can choose some stuff around CPU and multi-threading, for example, if we're allowing that. In my case, I'm going to leave that alone. I'll leave it as default. And then on the hardware side, we can look at cameras, microphones, Bluetooth radios, NFC, etc. All this type of external connectivity, so to speak, for the device. That's from the built-in, what's inside the device perspective, bringing in video, audio, etc. So we can see here, for example, we can enable or disable that, which might be appropriate for a compliance environment or for an education environment, etc. So in my case, I'll leave those alone. The ones I do want to target is around boot options. So particularly in education, but also in other environments where we can see the students. I remember times working in high schools where we had some pretty smart kids trying to change the OS of their device, right? So we can go ahead and change that here, disable that to ensure that we don't have them messing around with the OS that we've worked hard to provision and protect. So as we go through, we can see we now have the choice to choose where this goes. So that can be to user-based or device-based groups. In my case, I might say all devices. Again, you probably won't for yours, but it works in a demo. We'll go through and not worry about any of these applicability rules at this state, some kind of conditional logic there. We'll just go through, get our overview now of our settings. It's our DFCI profile for Windows 10 or later, scope to all devices with these couple of specific settings managed. All right, so now with, I guess, the framing, the understanding of at a high level, hey, we have this cloud platform, it's powerful, it scales, it even configures the device down to its lowest level of the firmware. What does it look like with a bit of a fuller picture of deployment using Windows Autopilot? So as you can see here, we get a great, I guess, perspective from a software and IT services firm showing us that everything in the cloud, getting a device up and running takes about 10 minutes. So for me, I know that's a massive improvement. And when I'm trying to unbox a device, trying to mess around with its firmware, trying to get a certain OS onto it, either from a USB or a Pixie boot or some other form, it's really important that we really lower that mean time to usability of a device when we can just take it out of the box with the factory shipped image and get it up and running. I mean, 10 minutes, that's pretty darn awesome. So I'm sure you guys can relate to the difference in a modern approach versus a traditional approach. If we look at what that traditional approach looks like, a little bit more detail, building an image, right? That classic thing of taking in a device or a VM, configuring that with the settings, the applications, the drivers, et cetera, that you want. That's an important step in that traditional imaging model using WIMs, using whatever it is that you're doing. And to then ghost that, to then push that onto a bunch of devices, you're going to be using USB sticks, Ethernet, like I said, Pixie boot or some form of USB process. And you're going to rinse and repeat that, right? So it's build the image, build that configuration, and then apply that over and over again. So that's very much a known entity. I mean, as CompNow, we may have even done that for you or do that for you now based on prior arrangements. But we're definitely encouraging all of our customers to assess where they're at, because it's really important to take a look at this new approach. The new approach looks more like still caring about and thinking about and collating the drivers and the settings and the policies, etc. But it's in a different way. It's actually now taking those and loading them into the cloud, into Microsoft Endpoint Manager, for example, and knowing that you can take any device in any state from the factory and then lay these things down over the top of the OS that's there. It's a much more efficient process. So we get to build those profiles in the settings. We get to then push them out to devices without ever having to see them. And in our case, maybe play some Xbox or whatever your replacement of time equals fun may be. The point is, it allows us to stop caring about each physical device that goes out from, birth to grave, so to speak, and have a more overview picture of what do I need to do on scale to my fleet of devices, and allow some automation to do that for you. So if we look at the life cycle of a Surface device, the prime example of this and how it can be done for Microsoft, we see a Surface with Autopilot. It is a case where a customer like you may get to this point where they decide, hey, let's give this a try. So what happens then is you will contact, say, us, CompNow. We'll work with you to build out a solution, right? We'll figure out, okay, what are the applications, what are the settings, et cetera, that we talked about? What is it that's going to take to configure a device, provision a device in the way that's important for you? We'll then look at taking that device that you may procure from us, for example, we allocate that to you as a customer of Microsoft, and that device gets shipped out directly to your new end user. What we see then is now inside of Endpoint Manager, a set of settings that we can work with you to establish to make sure they're right. As I said, driver settings, policies, applications, etc., are deployed to that device straight away. So we get this ease, again, of just thinking all the way back to from the factory, out of box, turn it on, identify as who you are, and get the settings and the applications that you need. So to kind of articulate this a little bit more, we've had a look at profiles already and how easy it is to deliver settings down to the device. Now let's have a look at applications. Okay, so here we are back into the Endpoint Manager console, having a look at applications now. So as we mentioned before, it's really important to get that kind of idea that, straight out of the box, that experience of an end user or for IT, pre-provisioning devices, getting that device configured and ready to go and doing that in a streamlined fashion. We've done it with profiles already. Now let's have a look at applications. We can go here inside of apps, go to Windows, and as you can see in our test tenant here, we've got a few things we've done before. I'm going to go ahead and hit Add, and I'm presented with different types. So it's important to understand we can do store applications, some built-in 365, Word, PowerPoint, etc., straight from Microsoft CDNs using their logic kind of managed for you. Or we can do some other custom applications of our own choosing, bring your own MSI installer, that type of thing. So in this case, we're going to go line of business app, which allows me to upload that MSI style of installer and deploy it to these Windows devices. We can go here, select start, and select the package. So for this demonstration, I've got a Microsoft Edge installer. So I'm just going to load that up here. And as you can see, it's picked it up straight away as an MSI installer that I've copied up or uploaded from my machine. We get the basic details of the application. We can type in Microsoft here as the publisher, and we can have a look through and do things like feature this inside of the company portal application. We can also have it in different categories, that might be useful for, again, browsing in a self-service sense or administrating as an admin inside of the console. Either way, I can go through now, hit next, and choose my groupings. So this might be required, so forced installs, for example, for end user devices that I want to automatically or be forced or be required to have this install. And then I might instead make it available to other devices from a self-servicing perspective. For this case, I'll go nice and simple. All devices have to have it. And we'll hit continue. With all these settings, we get to review, see how we've configured this in a required or in a self-serving fashion. Hit create, and it will go ahead and save this now and upload the package. All right, so now that we've had a look at configuring an application, let's have another look back now at the life cycle of a Surface device inside of this general context of unbox a device, identify as who you are, and get what you need. And we saw how easy that can be inside of Microsoft Endpoint Manager. So with this life cycle, as we see with Autopilot, and as I explained a second ago, we have this user identification, right? So it's the device, as we saw on our slides before, got shipped straight to the end user, and now they can identify as who they are. That process can, for example, show that they're a part of the sales team, as you see inside of this example here. And that can start to profile, start to tell a bit of a story. And if we link back to our profiles and our applications, that makes total sense with the groupings that we can scope items to. So as they unbox the new device and sign in, they get all that information. And what happens is straight away, boom, they're ready to go. From the device, from the factory, that device was shipped. It was had a version of Windows on it, was able to go through the autopilot process, straight away get the apps and the settings that Anna needed, and here she is ready to go. Now, of course, devices don't always stay with the person. Those people can leave in a shorter period than that device survives inside of an organization. So it needs to be redeployed. It needs to be reused. So the cool thing inside of Lifecycle with Surface and Autopilot is that if she leaves, we can actually reprovision this device pretty easily. We can send, for example, a remote command for Autopilot reset. After it goes through that reset process, similar to reset this PC, if you've ever done that on a Windows device before, we can have Raul, in this case, now sign in as an IT staff member, and he can use the same device that Anna was using. As he signs in, he then gets the apps and settings that he needs, and when he's done using it, or when the device reaches the end of its physical life cycle, it can be recycled and go through that process of being disposed safely and securely, and we start all over again with another device being deployed to that person. So we get this full lifecycle approach of straight out of the box, being able to configure this device in the way that it needs to be. Once that is done, we get the ability to go through and have that person effectively self-serve, crowdsourced, whatever way you look at it, to be configured and up and running. They only need to contact IT for the problems that they face, not for just getting going. And that's really, really important. So we have this life cycle now that is fully managed from the cloud, even down to the firmware layer, and we can reprovision, reset, redeploy as many times as we need before the device reaches the end of its life cycle, where it returns to vendor end of lease, is disposed securely, safely, responsibly, etc. That's pretty cool. So as we see here now, we have a basic idea of what can happen inside of that face-to-face experience, right? I've been talking about it this whole time. Let's have a look at what it looks like. As you can see, we go through a process of turning on the device and joining a network. That's obviously important. We can't provision from the cloud if we don't have a network. And what we see here is that as we join that Wi-Fi network, we can go through and get the apps and the settings that we need. So remember, it's that user identification process, right? So joining the network, being identified as who you are, and then at that point, because of who you are, that's a level of trust. And because of the device being assigned to your organization and automatically picking up that enrollment into Endpoint Manager via Autopilot, that's our second layer of trust there that allows us to just get going on the device and know that we're in a good state in a good way. We can see here that the user authenticates another time or two as that desktop is getting provisioned for their experience. And at the end of that process, they can get through and they can actually see all of their files, all of their settings that they need. OneDrive is an amazing enabler of that to make sure that as soon as they hit the desktop, they can be signed in with their account and see the files and the assets and the things that they need to get going. They could have even finished an Excel file on one old computer and started it up again on the new. The possibilities are limitless inside of the OneDrive, 365, and Autopilot experience. So outside of the one-to-one model, we also have a few other models. An example here that you see before you is a kiosk, right? So the ability to have it run through that Autopilot process, but straight away be more of a non-user-centric model that it's just used as an appliance, right? Just as a web page, web portal, for example, to sign in a kiosk experience. It can also be used for other things like digital signage as well, where, again, it's more of an appliance style of doing a task, right? Of showing people, different graphics or messaging or wayfinding, as this suggests here. And then, of course, the other use case of devices which is shared, so not one-to-one. So in a lab environment, for example, we have the ability to deploy with no user associated and still get it up and running very, very quickly and efficiently through the same modeling. So kind of another step or another part of this is ironically a throwback to our imaging days, right? So inside of the traditional deployment model, we had creating that master image, we had baking all those settings, and then we could do that rinse and repeat, right? We could sit in a back room somewhere, sit in a lab, and action that redeployment or that imaging of those devices before an end user needed to touch it. Well, we acknowledge that in the modern world, internet connectivity is a factor, right? We've all been in a case where we've got that 4G or that 3G or that, heaven forbid, 2.5G signal that's just not quite strong enough to do what we're trying to do. And that's a real thing, particularly in Australia. So what we see here is just a slight augmentation of that autopilot process, which is called pre-provisioning, formerly known as white glove. What that means is we get the ability to, as the IT admin, still touch the device and kind of pre-bake some stuff before the end user logs in and identifies with their username and password. So instead of the classic, hey, here's my password IT person so that you can do stuff to my device while I'm gone, which, let's be honest, isn't a great security practice. What we could do instead is grab that device, we hit the Windows key 5 times, and when you get the ability to preload, pre-bake those installation of those apps and key settings before the end user logs in. So it's a nice way for us as a partner like CompNow, or for you as internal IT in an organization, to still save the end user some time, but not take away from that sign in and get running experience that Autopilot is known for. So as we could see here, we pre-bake, pre-touch that with pre-provision. And as I said, she signs in and is ready to go. So in a pre-provisional sense, as you can see, it's very, very similar, with the exception of now us hitting that Windows key, getting this menu screen that you see in front of me, and being able then to preload without that user sign-in experience. It validates if it's assigned to the right account and if it's assigned to an individual user or not. And we get to accept that acknowledgement and continue on. And yeah, just like the one-to-one experience, it preloads all those settings and means that at the end, we've preloaded, we've taken away the time of, say, a crappy internet connection on the end user's end and made sure then everything's there ready for them to sign in and go. So what do we have now? We have a story of Surface and Autopilot better together, right? It's really Microsoft having a look at the software and the hardware and understanding the needs of organizations and bringing these two pieces of critical technology together in harmony. We have Surface, which is designed from the ground up for this Autopilot experience and really, maximizing on what should be on there. So we see, for example, the signature image that they lay down on this device, free from bloatware. I think some people have joked that, but it has the Xbox app on there. Yes, look, it's as minimal as you can get inside of the current OEM landscape. And what we really see is, again, that core Windows OS is there, that Microsoft Office apps are there ready to go straight away. Because again, most organizations that are going to use this are going to use those applications. And it means that, again, from, as we said before, the DFCI, the firmware side, that can be configured from the cloud, from the ground up, right from the birth of that device in a cloud-first sense, which is pretty awesome. Again, not needing to pre-touch that unless we have other reasons to. That hassle-free enrollment of just turning on and identifying yourself is so critical. And the ability to pre-bake some key apps and settings if they're going to take much longer for the end user device than we'd like, we've got that option too. So pretty awesome, all exemplified with Surface and Autopilot together. So I've sold you the dream. What do you need? Well, really, it's a case of licensing, right? As with all good things in the Microsoft realm, we have Windows Autopilot, which is at a really baseline, having Azure Active Directory licensing and an MDM server. Now, for many people, that looks like having some base licensing, potentially, Azure Active Directory P1 included in some licensing or purchased on its own outright. And then we also have a mobile device management solution, such as Endpoint Manager. I guess a lot of what we see inside of the spheres, organizations will have some form of existing licensing in the 365 space. So it may be a case of having a look at one of those existing SKUs, or taking a base SKU and adding on, a mobility and security SKU, for example. Again, the core components we're looking for in a Microsoft and 365 and Azure sense is that Intune license to act as our MDM and Azure Active Directory P1. As long as those two things are there, it's got you covered. The many or the common licenses, I should say, that we see that will include that. In education, there's some barrier for A1, but otherwise the 3 and the 5 level of licensing, and the business premium licensing includes this. So any of those, if you have them already, you have access to it already, you can start testing it out today, which is pretty accessible. So one of the last things I want to touch on is around the Surface Management Portal. So this is really, I guess, a step further inside of that endpoint manager sphere that really looks and caters for Surface specifically as a piece of hardware of choice. So what they have done at Microsoft is they've taken, I guess, the ability of, again, being the one vendor for hardware and software, to take and consolidate a single pane of glass view for that hardware in the context of the management that you're already using. So it really provides an excellent source of information at scale. At a high level, what we see is kind of 4 key components, which is that initial high device level overview, being able to see kind of a snapshot of the physical Surface devices, not just the devices enrolled in Endpoint Manager, but specifically your Surface devices. And then having a look beyond that, from, what's the general metrics of my fleet from a Surface perspective, diving into devices, warranty, and support. So on the device side, we get to see some important things around serialization, warranty coverage, etc. And being able to see at a high level what's all the physical devices that I have and what's the general state of them. As I said, in the warranty side, it's really cool. We get to kind of tap into and understand straight away, hey, what's the age of my fleet and what's the coverage for warranty? Have an understanding of that in a single pane of glass from an endpoint manager perspective. And then that support, what are the support cases I've lodged? What's the stuff that I've talked to Microsoft about? And I know for me personally, this has been fantastic to be able to go in and say, hey, let's have a look here to see everything I need to know about the life cycle of that device, rather than jumping from portal to portal between how I manage the device, doing how I procured it, etc. It's a really great one-stop shop. So finally, how do you get access to all this goodness? Look, really, it's pretty simple. You need to have Endpoint Manager. So you need to have your Azure 365 environment configured and licensed, like we just talked about. You need to have some devices actually enrolled in Intune, and those devices need to be Surface. So if you're using Endpoint Manager and you're using Intune, but with other OEM vendors, unfortunately, it's not there for you. So the best way to get access to this is get a Surface device, try it out. Have a look and see if some of the benefits you get here are worthwhile for the wider part of your estate. What you'll see is once those devices are enrolled, they'll get access to this, or they'll appear in here automatically, simply by being a Surface and by being managed by Intune, which is pretty cool. This is relatively new as well and rolled out last year, so we should see this available everywhere now. And with that, I'll hand back to you, Trev.
The device as a service model is fully customizable so that you can get exactly what you need from it. You start by choosing your Surface device, then whatever software you may need for it if required, add any services that CompNow provides such as help desk and installation. Finally, choose the terms, which can be anywhere from a 6 to 60-month contract depending on your needs. CompNow has thousands of devices out there under the Device as a Service program. We can configure and tailor it for each organisation. So if you have any further questions about this, please get in contact with us. Unlock the power with CompNow's free and customised portals for your school or business. This, combined with our personalised customer dashboards, let you have control, booking in repairs, purchase history and other great analytics. At CompNow, we are very aware of the environmental impacts of technology, and to combat this, we have made a solution available to our clients. Once your devices reach end of life, we recycle and/or repurpose them to ensure that the minimum amount is put into the landfill. Sustain IT securely wipes devices and in some cases can reimburse the organisation for them. Here we can see some customers of ours that have already implemented a modern workplace. Some of these names you may recognise and others are some schools we have worked with. We have some testimonials and case studies to share with you. We'll post the Cricket Australia one in the chat for you to take a look at. And that brings us to the end of today's webinar. If you need any help with what we've discussed today, get in touch with us about a modern deployment review by contacting us at info@compnow.com.au or give us a call at 1300 CompNow. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate your time. Have a great day and we'll see you next time.